One of them obviously was the comet that struck and created the Gulf of Mexico and decimated the dinosaurs and so forth. But five of those overall climate increase relationship. The difference between climate and weather, climate is annual, weather is daily. So in other words, yeah, you have crazy weather more or less, but the climate tells you more or less what goes on. And we're seeing what's going on. This past summer, hottest summer ever recorded. The hottest summer is unbelievable. One of the wettest summers also, which is ironic. And then you look at the West Coast, drought. You know, they had temperatures in Phoenix at 115 degrees that they actually had to ground all the planes because jet fuel is very volatile in high temperatures like that. They had to ground that, plus also the tarmacs were just coming up. So this is something that's really crazy, and we're seeing basically what is going on, and we're seeing that the climate has increased. It started basically around 1850, temperature 1850, and that's significant because that was the start of the Industrial Revolution. And we started seeing the carbon dioxide start going up and up and up. We have no idea what the level is, what's a satisfying level, what's a good level there. I know that Bill McKibben talks about 350.org, 350 parts per million. We are now around 420. We have nothing to compare them to, so we don't know what that's going to entail. We're seeing things happening right now. We're seeing what's going on. One of the problems that you can get with CO2 level increasing, and you also have temperature increasing, if you look at the graphs, it's identical. It can be superimposed. You know, for me being a scientist, I say, well, that's a connection. That tells me that as CO2 goes up, temperature goes up and coming through it. So that's something that has to be addressed more or less. And we're saying basically that temperatures are just increasing rapidly. You know, in 2005, when Al Gore came out with his Inconvenient Truth, 2005 and about 8 years prior to that were the hottest temperatures, hottest years ever recorded. That now is cool. That's cool compared to what we're seeing right now. The past 7 years have been the hottest that time. So we're just going through increasing it. So we are seeing major changes that's happening here. And it was really, really strange that, like with hurricanes more or less, like climate crisis does not cause hurricanes. It exacerbates them. It makes them worse. We look at, for example, Superstorm Sandy. That was a Category 1 hurricane, 75 miles per hour wind, hitting New Jersey, coming across New Jersey. It was so intense, that hurricane, that from the space station, they took a picture of Superstorm Sandy. And they found the effects going as far south as northern Florida, as far north as Maine, and as far west as the Mississippi River. I mean, unheard of ever having that kind of hurricane going through it. Devastation. How many deaths there were? There were many deaths. And especially around New York City, because without power, people living in high-rise buildings, how are they going to get down and up and down the stairs, more or less, coming through it? So we're seeing basically what's happening. The Paris Accord says that we shouldn't go over 2 degrees Celsius, which is 3.86 degrees Fahrenheit, coming through it. Well, we're about 1.5 degrees right at that point, and it's going up. It's going up, and it's an amazing thing. One of the issues that you're going to have, basically, is that when you're dealing with climate crisis, we talk about, like, there's an article written by David Wallace Wells called The Uninhabitable Earth. It was in New Yorker magazine. It came out in 2017, where he was talking to a climate scientist. One of the things that he said that I thought was really shocking, 2 things actually in the article. First one, glaciers are melting. Glaciers trap many things, bacteria, viruses. They predicted back then that there's going to be a lot of plagues going on. Who knows if the coronavirus is one of them? You know, we were seeing basically the ice melting and releasing all these bacteria and viruses that have not been seen in ever in the center. We're seeing them being released coming up here. And how much warmer we're talking about? Tremendous amount. There's no limit to it. You know, as according to here in 2020, the parts per million of carbon dioxide was like 416. It's up to 421 right now, and there's no decline going through. I have a scary thing, probably I'll tell you this, that if we stop burning fossil fuels right now, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to increase anyway. We have actually tagged a lot of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere right now that was created during Abraham Lincoln's time. You know, so if we stop today, for the next 50 years, it's still going to go up. It's going to be, you know, how do we mitigate that? Well, one of the things that you can mitigate that very simply is organic farming, where the plants, the soil, great sequestering of carbon. Great sequestering of carbon, but of course, we're destroying the land anyway. So that's a consideration there. We talk about, for example, the Northeast. Really, I mean, there's a dichotomy of weather patterns happening here. We are flooded in the Northeast. Actually, the whole East Coast is flooded going through. Yet on the West Coast, drought. Now, you have to think about the West Coast. You know, people saying it's a drought going on there, but the basic biome in the West Coast are deserts. You know, so you know, when you have 50 million people living in California and the desert can't hold that many people, of course there are going to be issues coming through it, but it's being exacerbated. We're seeing tremendous amount of wildfires going through there. We talk about wildfires in the U.S. and California. No one talks about the ones that happen in Greece, where entire Greece was just burning, Cyprus burning, going through there. Siberia has the flares, the gas flares there. And what's happening there is that most of the carbon dioxide and most of the methane, which is a more potent greenhouse gas, is found in the permafrost. So when the permafrost begins to melt, you release this methane, which is 84 times more toxic, more potent than carbon dioxide. So when you start releasing all of this methane into the atmosphere, hey, you know, it's going through. One of the other sources, which is really interesting, the oceans are warming. All right, the oceans are warming tremendously, and what's happening is the majority of carbon dioxide is actually frozen at the bottom of the oceans. And as the waters begin to get warmer, it's thawing out. For those of you who remember in chemistry, CO2 is called an acid anhydride, which means it's an acid minus the water. CO2 starts percolating up from the bottom of the ocean, combines with the water. You now have carbonic acid. You have seltzer, literally, which has a pH of around 5.5. And what that's doing, it's bleaching the corals, bleaching the coral reefs. And coral reefs is the basis for a lot of biodiversity in the ocean. And we're seeing it's dying. It literally is dying here. And you know, when biodiversity begins to die, we follow suit, we follow with it too. And if we look at precipitation, the Northeast, in fact, the entire north area of the U.S., tremendous amount of rain. July, August, September. August is a dry month usually. July is a wet month. But August had, I think, something like 10 inches of rain, which is like unheard of. September, a lot of rain. And in other words, when we get rain, we're getting rain that's downpours. You know, it's one thing if you have a steady, drizzle type of rain. The soil can use that. When you have downpours, it's going to just wash away the soil coming through here. This is dangerous what's going through here. And again, we have no idea what the future is going to hold, what's going to happen, because we have never recorded that before. This is just all new to us. We are, in a sense, writing history when it comes to the Earth and climate. And this is very dangerous.
We talked about this, right?
Changing season. Here's an interesting aspect of it. You know, there's a thing called indicator species, which are species that show there's something going on. We look at, for example, what's happening with birds. Birds are declining in mass. And the reason why they're declining in mass is because when birds nest and they produce their hatchlings, more or less, it's time to have where the insect population is at the highest. Because of climate change, climate crisis, insects are now becoming real prominent early in the season. Birds are still hatching in the right time. And so when the insects start to decrease in that time, there's no food for the birds. And we're seeing massive die-offs of birds going through. Okay? And we start seeing, for example, what's happening here is that, well, flooding, obviously. Tennessee just now had a major flood, just recently coming through here. And it does threaten health, obviously, what is going through here. I just want to stop here for a second. There's a thing called heat death.
No.
No?
We can talk to Mike more details after.
All right, okay.
So we can.
Well, you start having the thing called heat death. where the way your body cools down is by sweating. It's not the sweating that causes the cooling down. It's the evaporation of the sweat.
Yes.
So if the temperature gets real hot, that sweat that you have in your body is not going to be evaporated, and temperature just begins to rise and rise and rise in your body. So that's a major thing coming through it. And we're seeing basically, what is happening. Yeah, one thing, New York State is very, very progressive when it comes to the climate crisis. But you know something? Carbon dioxide has no boundaries. If it's created somewhere in the world, it's everywhere coming through. The California fires, a lot of the ash that was emitted from the fires, we saw prevalent in New York City. We saw them in Europe also going through it. So this is something that's really serious going through it. All right. Toxic air pollution, and this is a little mistake here. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why it says it's declining. Well, not really. The reason why it's declining is because under the Trump administration, many of the toxic pollutants were eliminated. They just didn't start counting it. In other words, methylene, blue, and these things, they were not being counted anymore, even though they were counted in the past. So of course, you're going to see a decline. Really? All right, so, yeah.
This is Woodstock's government operations. You can see that they've taken steps and have actually measured that we can lower our greenhouse gas emissions working together.
Yeah, here's what's going on. In the town of Hurley, we have a transfer station up here that's 3 acres going through, and it's capped now. And what we're doing right now, we're in the process now of working with the Climate Smart Community Committee, and we are going to be putting solar panels, arrays on there. And we actually figured out through using NYSERDA and talking to a couple of other solar panel companies that of the 3 acres that are viable, the DEC has said these 3 acres are very viable. 2.5 acres is what we need because you need to have a border around it also. And so we're going to put up solar arrays there. That's going to give something like 2.3 megawatts of energy. The average household uses about 8,000 kilowatts a year. We divide the 8,000 to 2.3, we're talking about 260 homes that we can supply. And what we're doing right now is when we start getting this whole thing out, we're into the RFP stage right now, request for proposals. And what we're doing right now is we're going to figure out exactly who's going to share this. And what we decided was that people, low income, steady, fixed incomes, senior citizens, they'll be the first ones getting it. And we're shooting for, we need to negotiate with the company, we're shooting for at least a 10% reduction for these people with fixed income, if not lower, more or less coming through. And one of the things also is, which is the beauty of this whole thing, it won't cost the town a dime. In fact, what we will probably do is rent the space that they pay us rent, in a sense. So that also can lower the cost of going through. So these are things that we are doing. But again, it can't be done by one single town. It has to be done not by one single state, not by 2 single states, not by one country. It can be done by everywhere. Everywhere. Because if we manage to lower our carbon dioxide level in the U.S., it means nothing because the whole world is not.
Isn't that the Paris Accords trying to get the whole world to agree?
Paris Accords is,
Yes.
I hate to say anything, but to me it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Literally, because it has no teeth.
Some teeth.
There's no teeth in it. Yeah, you have all of these things that you must meet, but there's no verification. The only people that verify it is the same country. China can say, hey, we're going to do this thing. In reality, it isn't. Same with the U.S. There's no teeth behind it. And that's the wrong part about it, because there should be some teeth involved in it, because that's the only way. Now, how do you put teeth in it? You start dealing with it, start trading with them. You start buying their exports, more or less. This kind of thing.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Does work.
Middle button?
No.
Go forward and back. No.
This one. This one's forward, this is back.
Toy.
So as I mentioned before, my name is Kristen Shara, and I'm the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator for the town of Hurley. And I'm part of the Climate Smart Task Force, which also includes Lynn Bailey and Andy Shapiro. And so I've been volunteering for many years for the Conservation Advisory Committee, and we've done quite a bit for the town in terms of studies of groundwater and how to protect our natural resources. But for me personally, as you know, my awareness of this climate emergency grew. I increasingly started to ask, what can I do? What can I do as a citizen? What can our town do? You know, because as Mike was saying, it really is, everybody has to be all in, everybody has to be reducing their carbon footprint. And that's about the time that this Climate Smart Communities program came into being in New York State. So, and that's why I signed up to work on it, and because I do think that this is something that the town and the citizens of the town, if we get on board with this program, we can make a difference on climate change. So what is Climate Smart New York? So it supports local governments in leading their communities to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, adapt to the effects of climate change, thrive in a green economy, because we have to transition to a new green economy. And the way they do that is they built in incentives. So they have, New York State has identified through the Climate Smart Communities program 90 actions that we can decide, and we can pick and choose which actions make sense for our town to do. So we do these things that they're calling actions, and I'll go into more detail about what that means in a bit. But so we do these actions as a town and get them certified that we have done them, and we get points. And once we get enough points, we can apply to become certified. The first level of certification is bronze. And then as you do more things and more projects, then you get to a higher level, which is silver. So that's just a quick explanation of that. So the outcomes of doing these actions are things like reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. Again, building resiliency. You know, how do we cope with, because climate change is here. We have to cope with it. And guess what? When you become more efficient, you're saving money. So we're saving taxpayer money by becoming more efficient. We're increasing our energy security and reliability. We're improving public health and safety because we are reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, just as Mike was talking earlier about the health effects. And again, we're supporting green businesses, which is what we need to transition to. That is the future. So it is a statewide program, and just to give you an idea, this map shows every pin is a community that is participating in New York State right now. So the blue pins are the registered communities, which is where we are now because we've just started. And the bronze and silver ones are obviously communities that have become certified already. And you can be a town, a village, a city, or a county. So this shows you in Ulster County how many towns are participating. And you can see that the city of Kingston and the Ulster County are already silver certified. And then there are several towns that have achieved bronze, and also the ones that are registered in our area. Okay. So so far, our town, these are some of the projects that we've already completed. We did a Solar Rise campaign. A lot of you probably remember this flyer that you got in the mail over the summer, where we invited people to sign up for community solar. We have a solar installation already in town. We have a solar array behind Town Hall, which offsets the electricity generation for the Town Hall. We have a charging station, which you might have seen outside at the car show. And we're working on getting climate change elements into the new comprehensive plan that's being revised. We have a climate action website where you can go to for more information about climate change and what to do and what we're doing. And we already do recycling in our government buildings. So those are actions that we can get points for. So here are ones that we are undertaking to again build up more points. We're going to do a greenhouse gas inventory and energy benchmarking of the town buildings. Once we have that data, then we can figure out what to do to reduce the greenhouse gas. We're going to do an inventory. They encourage us to do an inventory of our fleet and come up with an efficiency policy so that our future purchases will help to reduce greenhouse gases. They encourage us to engage the community and inform the public about climate change and what to do about it, which is what we're doing today. We are also at the Ulster County Fair this year. So we're developing policies for climate resilience, and we have on board the possibility of passing the New York Stretch Energy Code, which is a building code that if we apply it to new construction in our town, it will mean that buildings will be 20 to 30% more energy efficient. Is that right? No, is that too much?
It's only 10 to 12.
Okay, 10 to 12% more efficient, but you can see how not only is that better for the environment, but people will be saving money year after year. And also a green building standard for our buildings, and we're replacing our old style streetlights with LEDs. As they go offline or have to be maintained, they get replaced with LED lights. So those are projects that are underway in the town. So, besides getting points, when we complete some of these actions, this is another incentive that the state has set up. We are eligible for grants. In particular, because we did the Solarize campaign, we've already become eligible for a $5,000 grant. If we pass the New York Stretch Energy Code, we can also get another $5,000 grant. And also, once we become a certified community, it puts us in the sort of higher up in the queue for other grants that you apply for. It gives you extra points. So how can we use this grant money? For example, we did an energy audit of the town hall and found that the insulation is damaged and should be replaced, and we could be saving quite a bit of money for the town by having the attic properly insulated and sealed. And obviously this is not a good condition health-wise or energy efficient-wise for the town to have insulation like this. And again, with the Stretch Energy Code, just to, we would like to ask the town to adopt that. We will be eligible for a grant if we do it this year. And there will be a presentation at 2 p.m. From a NYSERDA representative to talk about it. So please stay tuned for that. And there's a petition to sign to let the town board know that you want to listen. So, thank you. So Lynn's going to come up and talk about, I'm sorry. And these are the high priority actions that they encourage us to perform, which we're working on. Okay. And so next, Lynn Bailey, a member of our Climate Smart Community Task Force, and she's also the coordinator of today's event. So, Lynn.
So the best, we look at this this chart and we can see which sections of our economy are contributing the most to greenhouse gases. And so moving forward, let's see where we can have the biggest effect. So right here, right now, we can upgrade our buildings. In your homes, you can electrify your heating systems. When you replace appliances, make sure they're Energy Star, and you can work on improving how you manage the waste in your homes. If you have the opportunity to upgrade your vehicle, switch to electric or hybrid. And as Mike Bones was pointing out, you know, we're going to have more of these opportunities available to switch to energy, to buy energy that's from renewable sources. You can always choose that with your provider, in this case, Central Hudson Gas. So today, you know, visit the car show. We have our heat pump station back there. Learn all about how they can save you a lot of money, and there's also ways to help pay for it. We're working on our initiatives. We have Peter Humphreys is outside. He can talk to you about the transfer station and what's recyclable and what isn't. And think about what you do with your lawns. You know, you don't have to rake all the leaves off the lawns, or you can certainly use them for mulch in other parts of your yard. And remember that we all use wells in this town. A lot of them are shallow, so what you put in the ground gets into the water. So let's, you know, that's one thing we can do. Now we are going to talk to you a little bit about the planting of the pollinator garden. So outside we've got some sand and we've got some seeds. So we're going to mix a little bit of seeds with a little bit more sand, and we're going to put that in a cup, and then walk over to the front of the parking lot, the other side of the parking lot, where you get a little square area that you will spread your seeds around. And then you just have to tamp on them to make sure they stick to the ground. All right, so we have that outside, and come learn about how the bees are affected by climate change and the birds, like Mike was talking about earlier. We have a red-headed woodpecker display. You can make an origami woodpecker. We also have some wiki sticks. If it starts to get bored, we have some coloring over here. And as soon as we finish with the garden, anybody who plants seeds in the garden, ask me for an apple, and we'll have some airbrush tattoos for the kids when we finish doing the garden, okay? And then this afternoon, a little later on, going to give Jim Greenhall a chance to say hello to everybody who hasn't spoken to him yet, and a little presentation from Central Hudson Gas, just to go over the benefits of the heat pumps. So anyway, there you go. We have, don't forget, we have this great table over here. We'd love to hear what your concerns are and share with us what you might like to learn more about, so that when we develop programs, you know, we'll know what you want to listen to, and let us know what's convenient for you. And anybody who wants to volunteer with us, we welcome you to the fold. All right, thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here later.